Hello, friends. You're watching The Night Watchman, where every day you'll hear a brand new horror story that will send chills down your spine. But to keep bringing you these terrifying tales, we need your love and support. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now let's begin the story. Emily Harper had always dreamed of leaving the chaos of New York City behind. At 32, after a messy divorce and a dead-end job in marketing, she packed her life into a beat-up Subaru and headed west to Maplewood, Minnesota, a quaint town nestled in the heart of the Midwest, where the winters were brutal and the summers smelled like fresh-cut grass. Population, 8,500. The kind of place where everyone knew your name, or so the welcome sign promised. She'd found the job online, assistant baker at Sweet Haven Bakery on Main Street. The ad was simple. Help wanted, early mornings, passion for pastries required, competitive pay, family-owned. The owner, Mr. Elias Thorne, was a widower in his late 60s, with a reputation for the best cinnamon rolls in the county. Emily needed a fresh start, and baking had always been her therapy. Kneading dough felt like control in a world that had spun out of it. Her first day was unremarkable. The bakery was a cozy two-story building with faded red brick and a sign that swung gently in the breeze. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of yeast and sugar. Elias greeted her with a firm handshake, his calloused hands speaking of decades behind the counter. Welcome aboard, Emily. We've been short-staffed since Martha left. He trailed off, his eyes flickering to the back room, where the massive industrial oven hummed like a sleeping giant. Martha, Emily learned from the locals at the diner next door, had been Elias's longtime assistant. She'd vanished 6 months ago without a trace. Just up and left, the waitress said with a shrug. Folks say she got tired of the early hours. But there was a hesitation in her voice, a glance over her shoulder that made Emily wonder. That night, as Emily settled into her rented apartment above the hardware store, she dismissed it as small-town gossip. Tomorrow would be better, the routine set in quickly. Wake at 4 a.m., trudge through the snow-dusted streets to the bakery. Elias was always there first, prepping the dough for the day's batches. He taught her the secrets, the perfect fold for croissants, the exact pinch of salt for bread. Baking's like life, he'd say with a wry smile. Too much heat and it all burns. The customers were a steady stream, farmers grabbing coffee and donuts, moms with strollers eyeing the muffins. But Emily noticed odd things. The oven, a relic from the 1950s, seemed to have a mind of its own. Sometimes it would flare up unexpectedly, scorching a tray of cookies. Elias blamed the thermostat. Old girl acts up now and then. One evening as they closed up, Elias shared a bit of the bakery's history. My great-grandfather built this place in 1923. Came over from England after the war. Said he wanted to make something sweet out of all that bitterness. He paused, wiping flour from his apron. Families run it ever since. Through the Depression, the wars, even that fire in '68. Fire? Emily asked, locking the front door. Elias nodded. Killed my uncle. Faulty wiring, they said. But we rebuilt. Always do. That night, Emily dreamed of flames licking at dough, shaping it into twisted forms that whispered her name. It started subtly, like a draft in an old house. 2 weeks in, Emily was alone in the back, shaping baguettes for the morning rush. The radio played soft jazz, masking the creaks of the building settling. Then a murmur, faint like wind through a crack. She froze, knife in hand. Elias? No answer. He was upstairs in his office, balancing the books. She shrugged it off, but as she slid the trays into the oven, the murmur returned. This time clearer, a low, guttural sound, like someone choking on words. Emily yanked open the oven door, expecting a burst of heat. Instead, cool air rushed out, and the dough on the trays moved. Just a ripple, like a breath under the surface. Heart pounding, she slammed the door shut and backed away. Must be the yeast activating funny, she muttered. But when she checked later, the baguettes were perfect. Too perfect, with intricate patterns etched into the crust, like fingerprints pressed deep. That afternoon, over lunch at the bakery's small cafe area, Emily mentioned it to Elias. He chuckled. Imagination runs wild in the wee hours. This place has stories, sure, but they're just that, stories. Curious, Emily visited the Maplewood Library after her shift. The librarian, an elderly woman named Mrs. Wilkins, pointed her to the local history section. Sweet Haven? Oh, it's got a past. She pulled out a dusty file, newspaper clippings from 1923. Elias's great-grandfather, Reginald Thorne, opened it after losing his family in a shipwreck. Rumors said he was unstable, claimed the oven was blessed by some old-world spirit. Emily skimmed the articles. Reginald had been accused of tampering with ingredients during the Prohibition era, rumors of poisoned loaves sold to rivals, but nothing proven. Then the 1968 fire, Elias's uncle trapped inside, body charred beyond recognition. Official cause, electrical fault. Unofficial whispers, suicide, or worse. As she left the library, snow flurrying around her, Emily felt eyes on her back. Glancing across the street, she saw the bakery's windows glowing faintly, even though it was closed. The incidents escalated. One morning, Emily arrived to find the mixing bowls arranged in a perfect circle on the floor, flour dusted in runes that looked ancient. Elias arrived minutes later, frowning. Kids must have broken in. But the doors were locked, no signs of entry. Customers started complaining too. Mrs. Larson, a regular, bit into a Danish and swore she tasted blood, metallic and warm. Like biting my tongue, she said, spitting it out. Elias comped her order, but Emily saw the worry in his eyes. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She researched online. Haunted Bakeries, Minnesota. Nothing specific, just urban legends about cursed kitchens. But one forum post caught her eye, from an anonymous user in 2019. Worked at Sweet Haven, heard voices in the oven, left before it got me like Martha. Martha? Emily's skin prickled. She texted a friend back in New York. This town's weirder than I thought. No reply, signal was spotty. The next day, while kneading dough, Emily felt it. A hand on her shoulder. She spun around. Nothing. But the dough in her hands warmed unnaturally, pulsing like a heartbeat. She dropped it, watching as it stretched toward her, tendrils of gluten reaching like fingers. Elias, she called. He rushed in, but by then the dough was inert. You're scaring yourself, he said gently. Take the afternoon off. Instead, Emily drove to the edge of town, to the old cemetery where the Thorns were buried. Reginald's grave was weathered. Beloved father, baker of souls. Below it, a faint inscription. From the fire we rise. As dusk fell, she heard it again. A whisper carried on the wind. Join us. Back at the bakery that evening, Emily couldn't shake the unease. Elias had gone home early, complaining of a headache. Alone, she explored the upstairs storage room, a dusty attic filled with old ledgers and baking tools. In a locked drawer, key hidden under a loose floorboard as if waiting for her, she found a leather-bound journal. Reginald Thorne's handwriting, dated 1923. I brought it with me, the first entry read. From the old country, the entity in the flames. It promised prosperity, but at a cost. The dough absorbs the essence. Souls kneaded in, baked eternal. Emily's hands trembled as she read on. Reginald had discovered an ancient artifact during the war, a cursed oven grate from a bombed-out monastery in Europe, believed to house a demon that fed on human despair. He smuggled it back, installing it in the bakery's oven. It makes the bread irresistible, he wrote, but it hungers. Every decade, it claims one. Entries detailed disappearances. A baker's apprentice in 1933 vanished into the night. A customer in 1945 found mummified in the basement. The 1968 fire? Not an accident. Elias's uncle had tried to destroy the grate, only to be consumed. The last entry, from Elias himself, added in shaky script. Martha found out, tried to warn her. Now it's calling for the next. Emily slammed the journal shut. Downstairs, the oven roared to life on its own. Panic set in. Emily grabbed her coat, intent on leaving, but the front door wouldn't budge. Locked from the outside? No, the knob turned, but an invisible force held it shut. The lights flickered, casting shadows that danced like flames. She raced to the back door. Same thing. The oven's hum grew louder, a chorus of whispers now. Names, pleas, screams muffled by heat. Emily, join us. Sweet forever. Desperate, she called Elias on her phone. It rang once, then static. A voice, not his, answered. He's with us now. No, Elias had left hours ago. She dialed 911, deadline. Trapped, Emily barricaded herself in the office, journal in hand. Hours passed. The whispers infiltrated her mind. Visions of Reginald feeding dough laced with blood, the entity growing stronger with each soul baked in. At midnight, a knock at the door. Emily, it's Elias, open up. Relief flooded her. She unbarricaded and opened it. Elias stood there, but his eyes glassy, unfocused. You found the journal, he said flatly. How did you? It told me. He stepped forward, revealing burns on his arms, fresh and blistering. The entity, it's part of the family now. My great-grandfather bound it here. It gives us success, but demands tribute. Emily backed away. Martha? She resisted, so it took her, kneaded her essence into the loaves. Customers loved them, said they were soulful. Horror gripped her. We have to destroy it. Elias laughed, a hollow sound. Tried that. The fire only feeds it. He lunged, grabbing her wrist. It's your turn now. Fresh blood for the dough. Emily fought back, shoving Elias into a shelf. Tools clattered down. A rolling pin cracked against his head. He slumped, dazed. She bolted downstairs, the oven blazing, door ajar like a maw. The whispers crescendoed. Bake with us. Eternal warmth. She grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall, aiming at the oven. Foam sprayed, but the flames laughed, growing taller, shaping into humanoid forms writhing in agony. Reginald's voice echoed in her head. The grate. Remove the grate. Inside the oven, amid the inferno, a blackened metal grate glowed red. Emily donned oven mitts, heart slamming. The heat singed her hair as she reached in, fingers blistering through the fabric. The grate came loose with a screech, like a soul tearing free. Visions assaulted her, Martha's face melting into dough, Elias's uncle screaming as flames consumed him. She hurled the grate to the floor, smashing it with a hammer from the toolbox. Shards flew, and with each break, the whispers faded to wails. Then silence. The oven died, flames extinguishing. The building groaned as if relieved. Elias stumbled down, blood trickling from his temple. What have you done? Freed us, Emily gasped. But as she turned to leave, the dough on the counter stirred, rising, forming shapes, hands, faces, pressing toward her. Emily fled into the night, snow whipping her face. She pounded on the diner's door, closed. The sheriff's office was 2 blocks away. She ran, breath fogging the air. Behind her, the bakery's lights flared back on. A scream, Elias's, pierced the quiet. At the station, Deputy Harlan listened skeptically. Sweet Haven? Elias is a good man. Let's check it out. They arrived to find the bakery pristine. Elias at the counter smiling. Evening, folks. Late night craving. Emily pointed. The oven. The grate. Elias shrugged. Must have been a nightmare, dear. Early hours play tricks. The deputy patted her shoulder. Get some rest, ma'am. Back in her apartment, Emily barricaded the door. But the whispers returned, fainter in her mind. You broke the vessel, but we're in you now. She looked at her hands. Dough residue, warm and pulsing. Days blurred. Emily quit, but the town felt wrong. Customers raved about the bakery's new recipes. Addictive, they said, eyes glazed. She researched similar stories in old European folklore. Demons bound to hearths, feeding on bakers' souls. One night, unable to sleep, she returned. The bakery was dark, but the oven glowed. Inside, shapes in the dough. Her face twisted in scream. Elias waited. It chose you, from the moment you applied. Why me? Fresh despair, divorce, loss, perfect ingredients. She grabbed a knife. End it, he smiled. You can't. It's risen. The dough enveloped her, warm and suffocating. Whispers filled her. Bake forever. Emily woke in the oven's embrace, not burning, but transforming. Her skin cracked like overbaked bread, essence kneading into the entity. But a spark remained. She clawed out, shattering the door. Flames erupted, true fire this time. The bakery burned, sirens wailing in the distance. Elias perished in the blaze, body fused to the ruins. Emily escaped, scarred but alive. The whispers silenced. Months later, in a new town, she opened her own bakery. But sometimes the dough rises on its own. No, she burned that life. Or did she? In Maplewood, rumors persist. Sweet Haven rebuilt under new management. Pastries to die for. Story 2. In the damp chill of Eldridge Hollow, Oregon, where the evergreen forests swallowed the town like a living shroud, Sarah Klein pulled her beat-up Ford pickup into the gravel lot of Hollow Hearth Bakery at 11:45 p.m. The neon sign flickered weakly against the relentless drizzle, its open 24/7 promise a beacon for night shift workers, insomniacs, and folks like her, chasing comfort in carbs after a double shift at the lumber mill. Sarah was 32, wiry from years of hauling timber, with calloused hands and eyes shadowed by loss. Her husband Tom had vanished 6 months ago in these woods, leaving only his muddy boots by the door. Police called it a hiking accident. Sarah knew better. Tonight, a gnawing hunger, more emotional than physical, drew her here. Hollow Hearth was legendary for its sourdough rye, baked fresh around the clock, with a scent that seeped into your soul like forbidden warmth. The bell above the door jingled softly as she stepped inside. The shop was empty save for the glow of display cases lined with golden loaves, eclairs dusted in powdered sugar, and pies oozing cherry filling. Behind the counter stood Mr. Harlan, the owner, a gaunt man in his late 60s with flour-dusted apron and eyes like polished obsidian. He'd run this place for 40 years, ever since buying it from the previous owners in 1985. "Evening, Sarah," Harlan rasped, his voice carrying the faint whistle of a lifelong smoker's lungs. "Rye again?" She nodded, forcing a smile. "Make it 2. Can't sleep." He slid the loaves into a paper bag without breaking eye contact. As he rang her up, Sarah noticed his hands, trembling slightly. Nails crusted with something dark, like old blood mixed with dough. Back home in her creaky cabin on the town's edge, Sarah tore into the bread. The crust cracked perfectly, releasing steam that fogged her kitchen window. The flavor exploded, tangy, earthy, with an undercurrent she couldn't place. Nutty, meaty, it warmed her from the inside, dulling the ache of Tom's absence. She devoured half a loaf before bed, dreaming of ovens roaring in caverns beneath Eldridge Hollow. Faces twisted in flame, whispering her name. She woke at dawn, sweating, the remaining bread calling from the counter like a lover. At work, the craving intensified. Colleagues joked about her bread glow, but Sarah felt it deeper, a pull toward the bakery. That evening she returned. Harlan was there, as always, kneading dough with rhythmic thuds that echoed like heartbeats. "You're back early," he said, not looking up. "Best rye in Oregon," she replied, but her eyes drifted to the backroom door, ajar just enough to reveal a massive brick oven, its mouth glowing faintly orange even in the dim light. Harlan followed her gaze. Family recipe, passed down from the original bakers, the Millers. They built this place in 1952 on the site of an old logging camp. Sarah leaned in. "Heard stories. They say the Millers disappeared after a fire." He chuckled, low and dry. "Folks talk. Eat your bread, Sarah. It fills the hollow parts." She bought extra, ignoring the tremor in his voice. A week passed in a haze of rye loaves. Sarah's dreams grew vivid. Tom wandering the woods, lured by a scent, his skin baking under an unseen heat. She started noticing things at Hollow Hearth. The flour bins labeled in faded ink with dates from the 1950s. A photo on the wall of the Miller family smiling stiffly beside that same oven, their aprons stained rust red. One rainy night, closing time came and went, but Harlan waved her to a stool. "Want the real story?" he asked, pouring coffee black as tar. Sarah nodded eagerly. "The Millers were innovators," he began. "Eldridge Hollow was booming post-Wee-Wah-Wah-Tee, loggers hungry for hearty food. But supplies were scarce, no meat trucks through the passes. Elias Miller, the patriarch, found a way. Hunted deep in the woods. Deer, boar, whatever the forest gave. His eyes gleamed. One winter, 1954, the snows trapped them. No deliveries. Elias went out, didn't come back till dawn, with enough to feed the town for months. Bakery thrived, but rumors spread. The meat was wrong. Too tender, too human tasting. Sarah shivered. What happened to them? Fire in 58. Oven exploded. Whole family gone. Elias, his wife Clara, sons Jacob and young Timmy. Ruins smoldered for days. I bought the lot cheap, rebuilt exact. That oven? Original bricks. He tapped the wall lovingly. Some say their spirits bake with me, keeps the bread alive. Sarah laughed it off, but as she left, she swore she heard childish giggles from the back room. Cravings turned obsessive. Sarah skipped meals, living on hollow hearth rye. Her skin softened, cheeks filled out unnaturally. Friends worried, she brushed them off. One midnight run, Harlan wasn't at the counter. The back door hung open, oven light pulsing like a heartbeat. "Harlan!" she called, a shuffle from the shadows. He emerged, apron slick with fresh dough, carrying a tray of rising loaves. "Helping the recipe along," he muttered. She glimpsed it then. A burlap sack in the corner, lumpy and damp, tied with twine stained dark. It twitched faintly. Her stomach twisted, but so did her hunger. She bought 3 loaves and fled. At home, slicing one open, she found it. Embedded in the crumb, a sliver of something pale and curved. A fingernail? She gagged, then tasted, salty, rich. The bread's magic surged stronger. That night, dreams revealed more. Elias Miller, gaunt and feral, dragging shapes through snow. Not deer, loggers gone missing, their screams baked into crust. Sarah woke screaming Tom's name. Desperate for answers, Sarah dug online at the town library's ancient computer. Eldridge Hollow Gazette Archives, 1954 headline screamed, "Mystery Meat Saves Bakery." Then Miller family perishes in Inferno. No bodies recovered. Rumors of cannibalism dismissed as hysteria. Harlan's name popped up. Born 1956 in Eldridge. No parents listed. He'd appeared post-fire, apprenticed under no one. Owned the bakery since '85. She confronted him next visit. "You're Timmy Miller, aren't you? The boy who survived." Harlan froze, doughboy hands clenching. "Fire took my family. I hid in the flour bins. Smelled it all. Flesh melting into bread. Customers devoured them, raving about the taste. But you rebuilt it. Elias taught me the woods gift. Hunger makes monsters. I feed the town. They stay fed on me." His laugh cracked. Tom came sniffing around, asked too many questions about the old hunts, said he'd expose it. Went into the woods, like the others. Sarah's blood ran cold. "You?" "Not me. The oven hungers too." He shoved a fresh loaf at her. "Eat, feel whole." She ran, but the craving clawed back. Tom's boots haunted her. Sarah drove to the forest edge at dusk, flashlight piercing the mist. The scent hit her, rye baking, impossible amid pines. Deeper in, she found it, a clearing with a stone-ringed pit, bricks matching the oven. Ash and bone fragments littered the ground. A fresh sack slumped nearby, bulging. Her phone buzzed. "Harlan, come back. The dough needs you." Flashlight caught movement. Tom's jacket snagged on a branch, ripped and bloodied. Nearby, a half-buried femur, gnaw marks fresh. She fled, but the path looped. The bakery appeared through trees, sign glowing unnaturally. Inside, Harlan waited, oven roaring. The Millers fed on loggers who wronged them, foremen who starved workers in 52 strike. Elias avenged. Fire was cursed backlash. I keep the cycle. Bread binds us. He opened the sack. Inside, Tom's face stared back. Pale lips parted in silent scream, dough rising from carved wounds. "Eat with me, Sarah. Join the hearth." She bolted for the door, but it slammed shut, locked by unseen hands. Oven heat blasted, walls closing in. Harlan advanced, knife gleaming. Elias's old hunting blade. You feel it, the pull. Woods give, oven takes. Visions assaulted her. Miller family feasts on screaming men, dough kneaded from their essence, baked into eternal hunger. Harlan, Timmy, preserved by it, ageless, feeding Eldridge's endless appetites. Sarah grabbed a rolling pin, swung wild. It connected. Harlan staggered, revealing scars, burns mapping his body like a flour sack map. "You can't stop it," he howled. "The town knows. They come back every night." Indeed, shadows stirred outside. Customers pressing windows, eyes hollow, mouths watering. She smashed the oven door. Flames erupted, but not fire. Faces writhing in brick, mouths agape. Harlan lunged, struggle blurred. Knife sliced her palm, blood dripping into spilled dough. It bubbled alive. With a final heave, she shoved him into the maw. He screamed as heat consumed, body folding into loaves before her eyes, crust forming over melting flesh. Silence fell. Oven cooled to embers. Sarah stumbled out, dawn breaking over Eldridge Hollow. No customers waited. Town slept oblivious. She drove home, hands shaking. The craving? Gone. But in her pocket, a chunk of rye from the floor, warm, pulsing faintly. Police later ruled Harlan's death accidental, oven malfunction, bakery condemned. Sarah sold her cabin, moved to Portland. Months passed. Normalcy returned, until cravings whispered again. One night, unable to resist, she baked. Simple sourdough. But the oven, her home one, glowed wrong. Slicing the loaf revealed it. Tom's wedding ring, baked inside. The scent spread. Neighbors knocked, eyes glazing. She understood now. The hearth wasn't bricks. It was hunger, passed like flour dust. Eldridge Hollow's true legacy. In the woods, new pits awaited. Elias's whisper, "Feed them, daughter." Sarah smiled, apron donned. The cycle baked on. Story 3, I never believed in ghosts until I started working at Sweet Haven Bakery in downtown Seattle. It was one of those places that everyone raved about. The kind of spot where locals and tourists alike lined up before dawn for fresh croissants and artisanal sourdough. Founded in 1923 by Elias Hawthorne, a reclusive immigrant from Eastern Europe, it had won Best Bakery in Washington State 3 years running. The walls were lined with black and white photos of Elias himself, stern-faced with a flour-dusted apron, and the air always smelled like vanilla and cinnamon, masking something faintly metallic that I could never quite place. I was 28, fresh out of a dead-end job at a coffee chain, when I saw the "Help Wanted" sign in the window. The owner, Mrs. Evelyn Carter, a widow in her late 60s with silver hair pinned in a neat bun, hired me on the spot. "We need someone young and energetic," she said, her eyes crinkling with a warmth that didn't quite reach them. "The night shift is quiet, but it pays well." I figured it was easy money, kneading dough, baking batches, and cleaning up after closing. Little did I know that the quiet was the problem. My first night was uneventful. The bakery closed at 8 p.m., and I started at 10, prepping for the morning rush. The kitchen was massive, with industrial ovens humming like distant thunder and rows of stainless steel counters gleaming under fluorescent lights. There was an old brick oven in the back, a relic from Elias's era, sealed shut with a heavy iron door that Evelyn warned me never to touch. "It's temperamental," she said vaguely. "We use the modern ones now." Around midnight, as I was mixing a batch of cinnamon rolls, I heard it, a soft scraping sound, like nails on wood, coming from the direction of the old oven. I paused, flour sifting through my fingers, but it stopped. Probably rats, I thought, though the place was spotless. I shook it off and kept working, the radio playing soft jazz to fill the silence. The backstory started trickling in from the day staff. During my first week, while grabbing coffee in the break room, a baker named Carlos pulled me aside. He was a burly guy from Tacoma, with tattoos peeking out from his sleeves. "You hear about Elias?" he whispered, glancing over his shoulder. "Guy was a genius with pastries, but nuts. Came over after World War I, fleeing some curse or something. Built this place with his bare hands, but rumor is he baked more than bread in that old oven." I laughed it off. "What, like bodies?" Carlos's face went pale. "Not funny, man. In the 30s, during the Depression, people went missing around here. Homeless folks, drifters. Cops never found him. Elias died in 45, heart attack right in front of that oven. They say his ghost still wanders, making sure the recipes stay secret. Evelyn overheard and shushed him. Superstitions, she snapped. Focus on the dough, not tall tales. But I noticed how she avoided the back corner, always sending someone else to fetch supplies from there. As weeks passed, the job settled into a routine, but the oddities built up. One night I found the flour bins rearranged, as if someone had been sifting through them. Another time the lights flickered, and I swore I saw a shadow dart behind the racks, tall and hunched like an old man. I started feeling watched, that prickling on the back of my neck. To cope, I blasted music louder, but even then, whispers seeped through, faint words I couldn't make out, like hungry or bake. I dug into the history on my days off. At the Seattle Public Library, I pored over old newspapers on microfilm. Sure enough, in 1932, 3 vagrants vanished near the bakery's alley. The police report mentioned a witness seeing smoke from the chimney at odd hours, but Elias had an alibi, baking late-night orders. No charges filed. Then, in 1945, Elias's obituary. Found slumped by his beloved oven, apron stained with what appeared to be blood, though autopsy confirmed natural causes. Blood? From what? Curiosity turned to unease when I mentioned it to Evelyn. Her face hardened. Let the past rest, dear. It's what keeps this place thriving. But her hands trembled as she handed me my paycheck. The suspense really kicked in during my 3rd month. It was a stormy October night, rain lashing the windows like angry fingers. I was alone as usual, rolling out pie crusts when the power surged. Lights dimmed, then brightened, and the old oven creaked, its door ajar. I froze. It was supposed to be locked. Heart pounding, I approached, the air growing colder, thicker with that metallic tang. Inside, the oven was dark, but something glinted, a small rusted key on the floor grate. As I bent to pick it up, a hand, cold and bony, grabbed my wrist from the shadows. I yanked back, stumbling, and the door slammed shut. No one was there, just my imagination. But my wrist bore red marks like fingerprints. I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? Instead, I pocketed the key and vowed to quit soon. But the bakery's pull was strange. The pastries I baked tasted better than ever, drawing record crowds. Evelyn even gave me a raise, her smile too wide. That key haunted me. It fit an old lockbox in the basement storage, which I discovered one night after hours. Inside were Elias's journals, yellowed pages filled with recipes, but twisted. The secret to perfection, he wrote in spidery script, is in the essence. Take from the unworthy, infuse the dough. They become eternal in every bite. Horror dawned as I read on. Entries from the 30s detailed luring drifters with free bread. Then, something unspeakable in the oven. Their screams flavor the crust, one page said. I slammed the book shut, bile rising. Was this real or madness? I confronted Evelyn the next day. What the hell is this? I thrust the journal at her. She sighed, aging 10 years in a moment. Elias discovered it by accident, a ritual from the old country. Bake with life force, and the goods become irresistible. Addiction level good. It's why we're the best, but it demands more. You're insane, I whispered. Am I? You've felt it, the pull. You're part of it now. I quit on the spot, but the nightmares started. Dreams of being trapped in the oven, heat searing my skin while Elias laughed. I'd wake sweating, craving the bakery's cinnamon rolls. Against my will, I returned as a customer, buying bags full, the taste euphoric yet wrong. One night, unable to sleep, I drove back. The shop was dark, but smoke curled from the chimney. Through the window, I saw Evelyn at the old oven, door open, feeding something in, something that writhed. A scream echoed, cut short. I ran, but the key was still in my pocket, burning like a brand. Days blurred. I lost weight, hallucinations plaguing me. Elias's face in mirrors, whispering, "Join us." Desperate, I researched more. Online forums mentioned cursed bakeries and folklore, but nothing specific. Then a genealogy site revealed Evelyn was Elias's granddaughter. She'd inherited the secret. I decided to end it. Late one night, I broke in, gasoline can in hand. The kitchen was empty, but the old oven hummed, door cracked. As I poured the fuel, a voice rasped. Finally, Elias materialized, gaunt, eyes glowing like embers. You've tasted the essence. Now become it. He lunged, but I fought, shoving him toward the oven. In the struggle, we tumbled in. Heat enveloped me, but it was cold, souls swirling, the missing ones trapped. I awoke outside, bakery ablaze, sirens wailing. Evelyn stood watching, tears streaming. It had to burn, she said. But the curse, it spreads. I fled Seattle, but the cravings linger. Every bakery I pass, I smell it, that metallic hint. And sometimes in the mirror, my eyes glow. Was it real or madness? I don't know. But if you ever visit a best bakery, ask about the backstory and watch the oven. Story 4. In the sleepy town of Eldridge, Oregon, nestled between the misty Cascade Mountains and the churning Pacific, a faded sign swung lazily above a corner storefront on Elm Street. Millwood's Bakery, it read, the gold lettering chipped from decades of relentless coastal rain. Locals whispered that the place had been there since 1923, when Elias Millwood, a gaunt immigrant from Eastern Europe, first fired up the brick ovens. But no one alive remembered Elias. The bakery had passed through hands like a cursed heirloom, always drawing new owners who vanished or broke under its weight. I moved to Eldridge in the fall of 2024, chasing a fresh start after my divorce. Portland's grind had chewed me up. A graphic designer laid off in the tech bust, wife gone with the house. Eldridge promised quiet. I found the For Lease sign on Millwoods while scouting cheap retail space for my side hustle. Artisanal sourdough. The rent was a steal, $800 a month for 1,200 square feet. The realtor, a wiry woman named Karen with eyes like polished stones, handed me the keys without fanfare. Prime spot, she said, avoiding my gaze. Ovens still work. Just mind the flour in the basement. I laughed it off. That night, I swept dust from the counters, the air thick with a sweet, stale scent, like caramel burned too long. The display cases gleamed under a fresh coat of paint, and the massive brick ovens loomed in the back like ancient beasts, their iron doors scarred from thousands of bakings. I crashed on an air mattress amid sacks of unopened flour, dreaming of cinnamon rolls that would pack the place by morning. Dawn broke gray and drizzling. I fired the ovens at 4 a.m., the flames roaring to life with a satisfying whoosh. My first batch, sourdough loaves with wild yeast I'd cultured myself, rose perfectly. By 7 a.m., the aroma wafted down Elm Street. A few locals trickled in, old Mr. Hargrove for black coffee, a jogger grabbing a muffin. Business was slow but promising. That evening, as I locked up, I noticed it. Faint scratches on the inside of the oven doors. Not rust, deliberate marks like nails dragged across metal. Etched faintly, H-E-L-P. I chalked it up to kids vandalizing before my lease. But sleep evaded me. In the quiet, I swore I heard a muffled tap, tap, tap from the basement door. The next day, curiosity won. The basement stairs creaked underfoot, leading to a damp stone chamber lit by a single bare bulb. Sacks of flour towered like monoliths, coated in gray dust. In the corner, a rusted dumbwaiter shaft dropped into darkness. No rats, no leaks. Just that flour, pale and clumpy, as if it had been sitting since the 20s. Karen's warning echoed. I grabbed a handful. It felt wrong, almost moist, sticking to my skin like dough that wouldn't yield. Back upstairs, I baked apple turnovers. Midway through, the oven thermometer spiked. 450 degrees Fahrenheit without me touching the dial. A loaf charred black inside, splitting open to reveal nothing. Empty crust. I tossed it, heart pounding, and called it a night. Word spread fast in Eldridge. By week 2, lines formed for my rosemary focaccia. Reviews on Yelp glowed, best bakery in Oregon. But at closing, the scratches multiplied, H-E-L-P-M-E. And now on the flour sacks, tiny handprints, child-sized, pressed into the dust. I started digging into the history. Eldridge Library had microfiche on Millwoods. Elias arrived in 1922, fleeing old country troubles. He built the ovens himself, sourcing bricks from a defunct cannery. In 1927, his daughter Abigail, age 8, vanished. Papers called it a tragedy. Kid wandered off into the woods. But a yellowed article buried deeper caught my eye. Bakery fire claims no victims, girl still missing. Elias claimed accident. Ovens ate the evidence, he said cryptically before hanging himself in 1929. Owners came and went. 1930s. Widow Jenkins, driven mad, baked screaming pies. 1950s. The Lopez family, all four poisoned by contaminated dough. Coroner puzzled, no toxin found. 1970s. Hippie commune turned it into a co-op. Members reported ghost bakers kneading at night. Last tenant, a guy named Ray in 2018, fled after 1 month. No forwarding address. I laughed it off as small-town myth. But that night, kneading dough by hand, my fingers brushed something hard. A tooth, small, milk white, embedded in the flour. Human. I gagged, rinsed it down the sink, and double-locked the doors. Sales boomed. Tourists from Portland raved about the haunted vibe on TikTok. I expanded. Croissants, eclairs, rye breads infused with local berries. One customer, a grizzled logger named Tom, lingered after buying a dozen donuts. Smells like the old days, he muttered. Elias's special, ghost bread. Ate it once as a kid. Tasted like ash and screams. What's ghost bread? I asked. He leaned in, breath sour. Flour from the basement. Bakes light as air, but folks say it hungers. Elias feted Abigail. Locked her in the dumbwaiter when she misbehaved. Ovens got too hot one night. She scratched the doors begging. After, he ground her bones into the flour. Keeps her baking forever? Tom chuckled, but his eyes darted to the ovens. Don't go down there after midnight. I ignored him. Profit margins soared. $5,000 in the first month. But the incidents escalated. Ovens turned themselves on at 2 a.m. I'd wake to flames licking the vents. Dough rose unnaturally fast, bubbling like it breathed. Customers complained of whispers in their pastries. Faint, childish pleas. Let me out. One rainy Tuesday, a girl named Lily, maybe 10, pigtails dripping, entered alone. Mommy wants cinnamon rolls, she said, voice flat. Her eyes were wrong, too wide, pupils like black pits. I bagged the order, but as she paid, her tiny hand gripped mine. Cold. It's hungry, she whispered. Feed it. She vanished into the storm. No mom ever came looking. That night I descended to the basement, flashlight shaking. The flour sacks pulsed faintly like lungs. I tore one open. Inside, not grains, but writhing white tendrils, coiling toward my light. A giggle echoed from the dumbwaiter. Childish, desperate. I slammed the door, bolted it. Upstairs, the ovens blazed. A fresh batch of loaves sat cooling, split open. Inside each, finger bones articulated, twitching. Panic hit. I called Karen, voicemail, sheriff's office. Heard the stories, bake something else. No help. By dawn, resolve hardened. I'd burn the place down. Gasoline cans from the shed, a trail to the ovens. But as I poured, the basement door rattled. Scratches, frantic now. Daddy, no, hungry. Not Elias's voice. Mine? No, Abigail's. Synthesized from memory? The ovens hissed open. Heat warped the air. Dough overflowed counters, crawling like lava, forming shapes. Tiny hands, pleading faces. I fled upstairs, barricaded the apartment I'd rented above the shop. But the scent seeped through. Sweet, sickly, inescapable. Sleep came in fits. Dreams of Elias, locking Abigail in the dumbwaiter for stealing dough. Ovens need feeding, he growled. She scratched for hours as heat rose. When he opened the door, only flour remained, fine powdered bone. He mixed it in. Now you bake forever. I woke sweating. Clock 11:58 p.m. The shop below thrummed. Against will, I descended. The ovens glowed cherry red. Dough kneaded itself on the table, rising into perfect loaves stamped with her name. A BBY. A compulsion gripped me. Hands moved on their own, sifting basement flour. It felt alive, clinging, whispering promises of endless customers, riches. One loaf. Just one. I slid it in. The oven door slammed shut. Screams not mine filled the air. Flesh searing, bones grinding. By morning, the shelves overflowed. I opened to a crowd. They devoured the Abbey loaves. Light, ethereal, addictive. Yelp exploded. Heaven in bread! Lines snaked around the block. Money poured in, but each bite, customers paled. Eyes hollowed. Whispers followed them home. Tom returned, gaunt. Told you, it hungers. Lily appeared nightly, watching from the window. More, she'd mouth. Weeks blurred. Eldridge changed. Empty storefronts filled with cravings. News hit. Mysterious illnesses. People wasting away, skin ashen, muttering about scratches inside their stomachs. CDC investigated. Flour tested clean. But I knew. The dumbwaiter groaned open one night. A hand, small, flour-dusted, emerged. Abigail, or what remained. Translucent skin stretched over bones. Eyes flour white. Bake with me, she rasped. I ran. Locked myself in the walk-in freezer. But the dough seeped under doors, enveloping. It pulled me down, kneading me into the mix. Last sight. Ovens yawning wide. Now Millwoods thrives under new management. Lines never end. Story 5. I never imagined that a simple craving for fresh bread could lead me down such a terrifying path. My name is Emily Harper, and I moved to Portland, Oregon last summer after a messy divorce left me needing a fresh start. Portland seemed perfect. Rainy streets, hipster vibes, and an endless supply of artisanal everything. I'd heard about Evergreen Bakery from a coworker at my new job in a downtown marketing firm. Best sourdough in the Pacific Northwest, she said. Run by this old family that's been there forever. You have to try their cinnamon rolls. They're addictive. The bakery sat on a quiet corner of Hawthorne Boulevard, a charming red brick building with fogged-up windows displaying golden loaves and pastries that looked like they belonged in a magazine. The sign above the door read, Evergreen Bakery Est. 1892, with a stylized tree etched into the wood. I pushed open the door that first rainy afternoon, the bell jingling softly, and was hit by the warm, yeasty aroma that wrapped around me like a hug. Behind the counter stood Mrs. Eleanor Vance, the owner, a wiry woman in her late 60s with silver hair tied in a bun and eyes that crinkled when she smiled. Welcome, dear. First time here? She asked, her voice like gravel, smoothed by years of customer chit-chat. I ordered a loaf of their signature rosemary olive bread and a coffee. As I waited, I noticed the walls lined with black and white photos, old-timey bakers kneading dough, a horse-drawn cart delivering flour, and a group shot from the 1920s with stern-faced men and women in aprons. Family business? I asked, nodding at the pictures. Eleanor's smile widened, but there was something off about it, like it didn't quite reach her eyes. Oh yes, generations of Vances. My great-grandfather started it after the Great Flood of 1890 wiped out half the city. Said the evergreen tree survived, so the bakery would too. We've got recipes passed down that no one else knows. She handed me my order, and as our fingers brushed, I felt a chill, even in the warm shop. The bread was incredible, crusty outside, soft and flavorful inside. I devoured half the loaf that night in my tiny apartment, feeling oddly satisfied, like it filled a void I didn't know I had. Over the next few weeks, Evergreen became my ritual. I'd stop by after work, chatting with Eleanor about Portland's quirks or the latest rainstorm. She introduced me to her son, Marcus, who helped in the back, a tall, brooding guy in his 40s with flour-dusted arms and a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow. He rarely spoke, just nodded and disappeared into the kitchen, where the ovens hummed like distant thunder. The customers were a mix, locals grabbing baguettes, tourists snapping photos, and a few regulars who lingered, eyes glazed as they savored their treats. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the clouds, I overheard 2 elderly women whispering at a corner table. You hear about that girl last month? Sarah something. Came here every day, then poof, gone. The other shushed her. Hush, Martha. It's just coincidence. Folks move away. I pretended not to listen, but it stuck with me. Later, Googling on my phone, I found a local news blurb. Sarah Wilkins, 28, reported missing after last being seen at Evergreen Bakery. No leads. I shook it off. Portland had its share of disappearances, what with the transients and all. But then the dream started. The first night after eating their pecan pie, I dreamed of wandering through a dense forest, evergreens towering like sentinels. The ground was soft, like dough, and I heard whispers, faint voices calling my name. I woke up sweating, the taste of cinnamon lingering on my tongue even though I hadn't eaten any. Weird, but I blamed stress. A couple days later, I returned for more. Eleanor seemed pleased. You're becoming one of our favorites, Emily. Try the special today, honey walnut twists, family recipe from the old days. The twist was divine, melting in my mouth with a subtle nuttiness I'd never tasted before. That night, the dream returned, more vivid. I was in the forest again, but now I saw figures among the trees, pale, emaciated people reaching out, their mouths stuffed with breadcrumbs. One looked like Sarah from the news photo I'd seen. I jolted awake at 3 a.m., heart pounding, and noticed something odd, a faint, flowery handprint on my bedroom window, as if someone had pressed against it from outside. But I lived on the third floor. Shaken, I decided to dig into the bakery's history. At the local library the next day, I pored over old newspapers on microfiche. Evergreen Bakery had indeed been around since 1892, founded by Elias Vance after the Willamette River flood devastated Portland. But there was more, a dark undercurrent. In 1918, during the Spanish flu, the bakery stayed open while others closed, supposedly because the Vances had a miracle flour that boosted immunity. Dozens flocked there, but records showed unusual deaths, customers wasting away despite eating heartily, bodies found skeletal as if starved from within. Then a 1940s article, a fire in the bakery's basement killed Elias's grandson, but the place reopened days later. Whispers of insurance fraud, but nothing proven. And in the 1970s, a string of missing persons linked to the shop. People last seen buying loaves, never heard from again. The police investigated but found nothing. Coincidence, the articles concluded. I felt a knot in my stomach. Was I imagining connections? That evening, rain lashing the streets, I went back to Evergreen. I had to confront Eleanor. The shop was empty except for Marcus in the back, the ovens roaring. Evening, dear, Eleanor said, wiping her hands on her apron. Usual. Actually, I have questions, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. About the history. I read about the flu era, the fire. Her smile faltered for a split second. Curious one, aren't you? Come, I'll show you the back. Family secrets are best shared in person. Against my better judgment, I followed her through the swinging door into the kitchen. The air was thick with heat and the scent of baking dough. Marcus glanced up from kneading, his eyes dark pools. The recipes, Eleanor began, leading me to a locked pantry, come from my great-grandfather. He found something in the floodwaters, a root buried deep under an ancient evergreen. Ground it into flour, and it changed everything. Bread that sustains, that binds. She unlocked the pantry, revealing shelves of jars filled with a pale, shimmering powder. Not flour, something organic, almost pulsing. It feeds on life, she whispered, a little at first, making you crave more. Then it takes root inside, growing until horror dawned on me. The dreams, the missing people. They weren't starving. Something was consuming them from within. I backed away, but Marcus blocked the door, his floury hands gripping a rolling pin like a weapon. You ate the special, Eleanor said softly. It's already in you. Panic surged. I shoved past Marcus, bursting into the rain-slick street. My apartment was blocks away. I ran, breath ragged, the taste of walnuts bitter in my mouth. Inside, I locked the door, grabbed my phone to call the police. But as I dialed, my fingers tingled, then went numb. Looking down, I saw veins bulging under my skin, like roots spreading. The dreams that night weren't dreams. They were visions. I was in the forest, but it was the bakery's basement. Roots twisting through the walls, bodies entangled in them, faces frozen in eternal hunger. Sarah was there whispering, "It never lets go." Morning came, but the craving hit like a wave. I fought it, starving myself all day. But by evening, weakness overtook me. I found myself walking back to Evergreen, the bell jingling as I entered. Eleanor smiled knowingly. "Welcome home, dear." That was weeks ago. Now I work in the back with Marcus, kneading dough infused with the root. It sustains me, but I feel it growing, hollowing me out. If you're reading this, scratched into the margins of an old recipe book I slipped into a customer's bag, stay away from Evergreen Bakery. The bread is to die for. But wait, that's not the end. I thought I could warn someone, but the root hears everything. As I write this, tendrils creep up my arms, pulling me deeper into the earth below the shop. The missing? We're not gone. We're part of it now, feeding the evergreens that guard the secret. If you crave something irresistible, remember, some hungers consume you. Story 6, I still remember the smell before I remember the fear. Warm butter, burnt sugar, yeast rising somewhere deep in the walls. That smell followed me for months after everything ended, sneaking into my dreams, clinging to my clothes, reminding me of the night I learned that some places don't just witness evil, they bake it in. The bakery was called Hollow Creek Breads, a small, independent shop on the edge of a dying town in Marrows Bend, Ohio. A town people only passed through, never stopped in unless they had to. I had to. I moved to Marrows Bend after my divorce. My wife, Emily, had died in a car accident 2 years earlier. Not the kind where people say, "At least it was quick." Hers wasn't. A drunk driver, a fire, a closed casket. After that, my life turned into a series of empty rooms and unpaid bills. I left Chicago because every street reminded me of her laugh, her hand slipping into mine, her obsession with pastries. Emily loved bakeries. So when I saw the "now hiring night baker" sign taped crookedly to the fogged window of Hollow Creek Breads, something inside me twisted. I told myself it was fate, or maybe punishment. Either way, I walked in. The bell above the door rang too softly, like it was tired. The shop was narrow and dim, lit by yellow bulbs that hummed like insects. Display cases held pastries that looked perfect. Too perfect. No crumbs, no fingerprints, no signs of age. Behind the counter stood Margaret Holloway, the owner. She was in her late 50s, tall, thin, her gray hair pulled back so tight it made her skin look stretched. Her smile never reached her eyes. "You're here about the job," she said, not asking. I nodded. She didn't look at my resume, didn't ask about my experience, just studied my face for a long moment, like she was memorizing it. "You'll work nights," she said. "Midnight to 6. No customers, just baking." I should have asked why the pastries were already fresh-looking at 3 p.m. I should have asked why the back hallway smelled faintly like iron beneath the sugar. I didn't. I needed the money. My first shift started at midnight. Margaret handed me a heavy ring of keys and pointed toward the back. "Don't open the freezer," she said calmly. "Ever." That was it. No explanation. The bakery changed at night. The walls seemed closer. The ovens breathed, clicking and popping, even when they were off. The air felt thick, like it had memory. I started with dough. Flour dusted the counters. The rhythm helped. Kneading, folding, shaping. For a while, I almost forgot where I was. Then I heard footsteps, slow, bare, coming from the back hallway. I froze. "Hello," I called. No answer. The footsteps stopped right outside the prep room door. I waited, heart hammering, hand wrapped around a rolling pin like it could save me. After a long minute, the steps retreated. I told myself it was the building settling. I lied. On my third night, I found the journal. It was tucked beneath a loose tile behind the counter, wrapped in plastic. Old, leather-bound. The name Eleanor Holloway was written inside. Margaret's mother. The entries started normal. Recipes, measurements, notes about yeast behavior. But then they changed. The bread tastes better when they're afraid. Fear tightens the muscle, improves texture. Margaret doesn't understand yet. She will. My stomach turned. Later entries talked about offerings. about feeding the ovens, about listening to the walls when they whisper. I should have quit. Instead, I kept reading. On the fifth night, the power went out. The ovens died, the lights flickered, then darkness swallowed the bakery. My phone flashlight barely cut through the black. From the back hallway, I heard crying. A woman's voice, soft, broken. Please, someone. My skin prickled. The sound came from the freezer door. Margaret's rule echoed in my head. Don't open the freezer. I stood there shaking, torn between fear and guilt. Emily's face flashed in my mind. What kind of man ignores a cry for help? I unlocked the freezer. Cold air exploded outward, carrying a smell that wasn't food. Inside, stacked neatly like inventory, were bodies, not frozen solid, preserved, wrapped in butcher paper. Each tagged with dates, names. Some of them were still breathing. The crying came from a woman in the corner, eyes wide, lips blue, fingers raw from clawing at the door. Before I could move, the lights snapped back on, and Margaret was standing behind me. She didn't scream, didn't run. She smiled. You opened it, she said softly. I was wondering when you would. I backed away, heart pounding. What the hell is this? Legacy, she replied. This bakery has fed Marrow's Bend for nearly a century. During the Depression, during the war, during every famine and recession, she stepped closer. People disappear all the time. Drifters, runaways, lonely souls looking for work. My mouth went dry. They're afraid, she continued. That fear seasons the meat. The ovens require it. The walls groaned, like they agreed. I realized then, the bakery wasn't just a place. It was hungry. Margaret lunged for me. I ran. The bakery twisted as I moved. Hallways stretched. Doors appeared where none existed before. The ovens roared to life on their own, flames licking like tongues. I slammed into the prep room, barricaded the door with racks. The walls pulsed, warm and wet, like flesh. From outside, Margaret's voice sang softly. Don't fight it, she crooned. You'll make the best bread yet. The ovens screamed. Something grabbed my ankle from beneath the floor. I fell, pain exploding, as hands, too many hands, dragged me toward the oven mouth. Faces pushed through the walls, mouths open, eyes hollow. In the reflection of the steel door, I saw myself. And for a moment, I saw Emily standing behind me, crying. Don't let it take you, she whispered. That gave me strength. I grabbed a knife from the prep table and plunged it into the control panel of the main oven. The explosion knocked me back. Fire roared. The walls screamed, actually screamed, as cracks split the tiles. The smell of burning sugar and flesh filled the air. Margaret shrieked, not in pain, but in loss. The bakery collapsed in on itself as I crawled toward the exit, dragging the woman from the freezer with me. We burst through the front door just as the building imploded, folding inward like it was being swallowed by the ground. Silence followed. The bakery was gone, just a scorched lot. The woman survived. Margaret Holloway was never found. The police ruled it a gas explosion. Marrow's Bend pretended nothing strange had ever happened. But sometimes when I pass a bakery late at night, when I smell warm bread and sugar, I swear I hear ovens breathing, waiting, hungry, and I know deep down that Hollow Creek breads didn't die. It just moved on. Story 7. I never thought a place as innocent as a bakery could harbor such darkness. My name is Emily Carter, and I moved to Seattle from a small town in Oregon about 2 years ago, chasing a fresh start after a messy divorce. Seattle's rain-soaked streets and endless coffee shops felt like the perfect escape, but it was the aroma of fresh bread that drew me to Whispering Wheat Bakery on Pike Street. It was hailed as the best in the city, award-winning sourdough, flaky croissants that melted in your mouth, and those cinnamon rolls that had lines wrapping around the block on weekends. Owned by the enigmatic Mr. Harlan Reed, a man in his late 50s with a perpetual flour-dusted apron and a warm smile that hid tired eyes, the shop had been a staple since the 1980s. Little did I know its history went much deeper, buried like roots in the damp Pacific Northwest soil. It all started innocently enough. I was job hunting, scrolling through listings on my laptop in a cramped apartment overlooking Elliott Bay, when I saw the ad. Part-time baker's assistant needed at Whispering Wheat. No experience required. Passion for pastries a must. I applied on a whim, figuring it beat slinging lattes at yet another Starbucks. Harlan called me the next day, his voice gravelly but kind over the phone. "Come in tomorrow at dawn, Emily. We'll see if you've got the dough for it." He chuckled at his own pun, and I laughed along, ignoring the odd chill that ran down my spine. The bakery was a charming relic amid Seattle's modern bustle. A two-story brick building with fogged-up windows displaying tiers of golden loaves and colorful macarons. The sign above the door creaked faintly in the wind, whispering like it had secrets. Inside, the air was thick with yeast and sugar, the kind of scent that wrapped around you like a hug. Harlan greeted me at the counter, his hands calloused from years of kneading. "Welcome to the family," he said, handing me an apron. His wife, Clara, a quiet woman with silver-streaked hair, nodded from the back, where she was piping frosting onto cupcakes. They had no kids, he'd mentioned offhand, just the bakery. It was their everything. My first shift was magical. I learned to measure flour precisely, to fold butter into dough for perfect lamination. The regulars were a mix, tech bros from Amazon grabbing bagels, tourists snapping photos of the vintage ovens, and locals like Mrs. Evelyn Grant, an elderly widow who came every morning for a single blueberry muffin. "This place saved me after my husband passed," she'd say, her eyes misty. "Harlan's bread. It's like comfort in a bite." I smiled, but noticed how Harlan's face tightened whenever death was mentioned. "We don't dwell on the past here," he'd mutter, steering the conversation to recipes. As weeks turned to months, I settled in. But odd things began to niggle at me. The basement storeroom, for one. Harlan kept it locked, saying it was for old equipment. Once, when I needed extra yeast, he handed me the key reluctantly. Down there, amid sacks of flour and dusty shelves, I found faded newspaper clippings pinned to a corkboard. Yellowed articles from 1972 about a fire at the old Reed family farm in rural Washington, just outside Enumclaw. Tragic blaze claims lives of Harlan Reed's parents and siblings. The photo showed a charred barn, smoke still rising. Harlan was quoted as the sole survivor, a teenager at the time. "It was an accident," the article said. "Faulty wiring. But why keep this hidden?" I shrugged it off, locking the door behind me. Then came the whispers. At first I thought it was the wind through the vents, but during quiet closing shifts, I'd hear faint murmurs from the walls. "Help! Burn!" Like echoes from a dream. Clara dismissed it as old pipes groaning. But one night, alone after hours, I was mopping the floor when the power flickered. The ovens hummed to life on their own, the temperature gauge spiking to 500 degrees. I yanked the plugs, heart pounding, and that's when I saw it. A shadow in the reflection of the glass display case. A figure, small and charred, reaching out. I spun around. Nothing there. Just the empty shop, rain pattering against the windows. I confided in my roommate, Jake, a barista at a nearby cafe. "You're working too hard, Em. Baker's hours are killer." He laughed, but I couldn't shake it. Researching online late at night, I dug into the bakery's history. The building wasn't always a bakery. In the 1920s, it was a speakeasy during Prohibition, run by a bootlegger named Silas Crow. Rumors swirled of a hidden tunnel in the basement for smuggling liquor from the bay. But darker tales emerged on obscure Seattle history forums. A raid gone wrong in 1929, where federal agents set the place ablaze to destroy evidence. Several patrons, including children, were trapped and burned alive. The screams echoed for days, one anonymous post claimed. Crow escaped, but they say the spirits linger, drawn to fire. Coincidence. Harlan's family fire was decades later, but the parallels unnerved me. I started noticing more anomalies. Pastries left overnight would char black by morning, as if baked in an inferno. Customers complained of a burnt taste in otherwise perfect goods. And Harlan, he'd stare at the ovens sometimes, murmuring apologies under his breath. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." Clara would pull him away, her face pale. One rainy afternoon, Mrs. Grant didn't show up for her muffin. Harlan shrugged it off, but I worried. She lived alone in a nearby retirement home. On my break, I visited her. The nurse at the desk frowned. Evelyn? She passed last night. Heart attack in her sleep. But as I left, another resident pulled me aside, whispering, she was fine yesterday. Said she saw something in her muffin. A face, screaming, scared her to death. That night I confronted Harlan. The shop was closed, the only light from the street lamps filtering through the blinds. What's going on here? The fires, the whispers. It's connected to your past, isn't it? He sighed, sinking into a chair, looking older than his years. You shouldn't have dug, Emily. But since you have, sit down. He told me the backstory, his voice trembling. The Reed farm fire wasn't an accident. As a boy, Harlan had been playing with matches in the barn, experimenting with magic he'd read about in old books. Rituals from Silas Crow's era, whispers of binding spirits for prosperity. The farm was failing. I thought I could summon help. Instead, he unleashed something. Flames erupted, consuming his family. He survived by hiding in a water trough, but the spirits followed him. When he bought the old speakeasy building in Seattle, unknowingly the site of Crow's fire, he turned it into a bakery, hoping the warmth of ovens would appease them. Bread rises from ashes, he said bitterly. They feed on the heat, on memories of burning, but they hunger for more. Clara entered then, her eyes hollow. We thought we could contain it, but lately, they're restless. As if on cue, the whispers grew louder, swirling around us. Burn! Join us! The temperature rose, the air shimmering like a mirage. I bolted for the door, but it wouldn't budge. Harlan grabbed my arm. You can't leave now. They've marked you. Panic surged as smoke seeped from the vents, not from fire but ethereal, acrid. Shadows danced on the walls, forming shapes, twisted figures, mouths agape in silent screams. Clara screamed as one enveloped her, her skin blistering impossibly. In desperation, I remembered the basement tunnel from the forms. Racing downstairs, key in hand, I pried open a hidden panel behind the clippings. A dank passage stretched into darkness, the whispers echoing louder. Harlan followed, pleading, "Don't go in there. It's their domain." But I had no choice. Crawling through cobwebs and muck, the tunnel sloped downward toward the bay. The air grew hotter, like stepping into an oven. Flashbacks hit me, not mine, but visions. 1929. Flames roaring as agents barred the doors. Children clawing at walls. Then 1972. Harlan's siblings crying out as the barn collapsed. The spirits weren't vengeful. They were trapped, reliving their deaths, pulling others in to share the agony. I emerged into a storm drain by the waterfront, rain pounding. Gasping, I looked back. The tunnel sealed itself with a whoosh of heat. Sirens wailed in the distance. The bakery was ablaze, flames licking the sky. Harlan and Clara, gone. I fled Seattle that night, hitchhiking south, but the whispers follow me still, faint in the wind, in the sizzle of a frying pan. I avoid bakeries now, the smell of bread twisting my stomach. Was it real, or my imagination, fueled by stress? No, the scars on my hands from that ethereal smoke prove it. If you ever visit Pike Street, where a new cafe stands on the ashes, listen closely. You might hear them too. But for me, the nightmare lingers. Every time I close my eyes, I see the ovens glowing, waiting. The bakery's secret wasn't in the recipes. It was baked into the very foundation, rising like dough from the dead. I thought I escaped, but last week in my new town in Portland, I passed a small bakery. The sign read Rising Ashes, and the owner, he looked just like Harlan, smiling that weary smile. Is it over or just beginning? No, I tell myself, but the whispers say otherwise. One night, alone in my apartment, I woke to the smell of burning bread. My kitchen oven was on, door ajar, heat blasting. Inside, a loaf charred black, shaped like a screaming face. I smashed it to pieces, but the crumbs reformed, whispering my name. They're here, and they're hungry. I barricaded the door, but it's futile. The heat is rising. If you're reading this, stay away from perfect bakeries. Perfection always hides ashes. I hear them now, closer. Burn with us, Emily. The walls are warming. I can't escape.